Oh, Far Cry, how I missed you. It's good to be back. Far Cry Primal was so many things that shouldn't have worked. It was a Far Cry game without guns, without a plot, without a language anyone speaks, and with a map reused from Far Cry 4. But you know why it does work? Because Far Cry works. Or at least it used to. The only thing the series ever had was a great gameplay loop and a new gimmick for each game. This has fallen off in the last few entries, with Far Cry 6 being so abysmal, I stopped playing it entirely and uninstalled within a few hours out of sheer boredom. But what that experience gave me was a renewed interest in the Far Cry series. Moving through both 3 and 5 with the former holding my interest better than the latter, but both being experiences I saw through to the end. When pondering what game I wanted to cover after the complexity that is Alpha Protocol, I thought why not tackle something incredibly simple and the most boiled down Far Cry experience there's ever been. What I got was more or less what I was looking for in a wonderful world to just play around in. One that was surprisingly difficult to put down, always boiling down to just, I'll just hunt one last animal. I'll gather this one last resource. I'll just do this one last quest. And if that's not what you're looking for in a Far Cry game, then you're looking in the wrong place. No restraint on spoilers for this one, so if you don't want spoilers for a game I described as not having a plot, I'll see you later. Hope you come back soon. Alright, let's get into the good stuff. Far Cry has always been known for its gameplay. It's for the most part the series' only selling point, or at least by far its best one. So how does a series about gunplay deal with not having any guns? In the best possible way, if you ask me. The bow has always been a staple of the Far Cry series, and I have to say that, for the most part, it actually felt like a bit of a letdown here. Something about tracking moving targets was very difficult for me in this game in ways it just wasn't in previous titles. But I must say, when it was working in my favor, it was a ton of fun. Just like newer Far Cry titles have the recurve and compound bow for speed and power respectively, you're given the regular or longbow, and they do offer similar but different playstyles. The reality is that once you get to the point where enemies begin wearing helmets, the longbow will become a much preferred weapon with its higher penetrating power. But with numerous poorly armored enemies, the rate of fire of the simple bow offers can be devastating. There is another version of the bow offered in the double bow, which is absolutely awful, and I hate it. Why would you shoot 2 arrows at once if half of them miss? That's just shooting 1 arrow. You're dumb. Alright, moving on. The only actual problem the bow has in this game compared to other Far Cry titles is its lack of unique gameplay. In every other entry, the bow is a powerful but skillful tool that you can learn to use to take over the battlefield, turning it into your hunting ground. But in the land of Oros, it's not an option, it's the option. You can throw spears and rocks, but when you need a ranged weapon, you're almost always likely to reach for the bow, taking what was once an entirely unique feeling option into something you're forced to use. It's not bad, it's just lost what made it special. Outside of the bow you'll often find in your hands, there is a surprisingly diverse array of weapons you can use over the course of the game, all of them having upgrade paths you'll have to work for. You'll have spears, a one-handed club, a two-handed club, throwing knives, throwing rocks, traps, and a couple of offhand throwables and firebombs, berserk bombs, and bee-bombs. We'll start with clubs. It's a club. I don't really know what you want me to discuss. Do you know what a club is? I would think so. I'd be a little more concerned if you didn't, in fact, know what a club was. Do people know what clubs are? Hold on.
What's up?
Do you know what a club is?
A club? You mean like a strip club?
No.
Like a golf club?
Like a whack on the head club.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, people know what clubs are. Cool. The one-handed variant is a fast, fun way to bonk someone on the head, while the two-hander is a slower way to hit someone on the head noticeably harder. The fun thing about clubs is that while it's not particularly effective, you can use them to hit enemies out of arm's reach by simply chucking them at a dude. It's not the most effective thing, but can be both a good way to deal damage with multiple enemies at different ranges, occupying far enemies while you deal with closer ones, or stunning them while you close the distance. On a simpler note, it's really fun to throw heavy objects at people, and here's no exception. To Cutthroat Club. Go bonk. Spears are an interesting weapon, and in my opinion, both the most disappointing and most satisfying weapon in the game depending on how it's used. If used like a normal spear in 2 hands poking things, it feels slow, unresponsive, and weak. But if you treat it like your old college javelin... Actually, maybe not, don't do that. If you treat it like a big pointy stick and yeet it at a motherfucker, it can be absolutely devastating. Because of its limited supply, you can often find yourself unwilling to throw your spear, but when the moment calls for it and you let it fly, the feeling upon landing a clean hit is incredibly satisfying. From combat to hunting, the spear when thrown is the most powerful weapon in the game, and the limited supply you get supports that. Speaking of throwables, I've been waiting to talk about how entertaining it is to throw bees at people. I wonder if there's a Wicker Man mod, I should check on that. Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Regardless, it's just downright awesome to be able to throw a bundle of bees at your enemy, even if it might be a bit mean-spirited. What am I talking about? You throw fucking fire at people all the time. Are bees worse than fire? I don't know. I need to make a poll. Anyway, your other throwables are good old-fashioned firebombs that work like every Molotov you've used in every game ever, and a Berserk Bomb, Ubisoft's free win button. Alright, look, I've got a bone to pick with this one. This isn't a Far Cry problem, this isn't a Far Cry Primal problem, it's a Ubisoft problem that plagued the Assassin's Creed franchise for multiple titles and seeped into Far Cry Primal. Don't get me wrong, the ability to have your enemies going berserk and attacking their allies sounds incredibly fun, but what it actually becomes is an I win button if you can remain undetected, which the owl lets you do. Let me explain. As with most Far Cry games, a huge portion of your gameplay challenges will involve outposts. They're somewhat unique challenges that reward stealth and cunning. The problem with outposts in Primal is that with the bow being your only ranged weapon and later enemies wearing helmets to protect themselves, it can be hard to stealth your way through a base. This becomes a problem because players will naturally take the path of least resistance, and that is simply the owl in most cases. If you don't know, you can take control of an owl to do long-range reconnaissance. Sounds perfectly reasonable. But once you upgrade it, you can let said owl deploy your throwables. What this allows you to do is send out an owl, find a heavy enemy, drop a berserk bomb on him, and watch through your wall hacks as he takes out the vast majority of the camp without setting off the alarms. I understand the argument of if it's not fun, don't use it, and I used to say the same thing, but what I've come to understand and accept is that if you give players an I win button, they're going to push it more often than they're not, and that should really be avoided. It's not world ending, but it certainly made Outpost less entertaining than other titles in the series. What the game does have that gives it a unique feel outside of featuring literal cavemen is the Beastmaster feature that allows you to tame various predators from around Oros. If I'm totally honest, you're not going to use most of them, like the wolves or the regular bear, because it's so easy to find upgraded versions of these animals, but some do have some very unique gimmicks, like the dholes recovering supplies from animal kills for you, or wolves growling with nearby enemies. But for the most part, you're going to use the big three in the Black Jaguar, the Big Scar Bear, and the Bloodfang Sabretooth. The Black Jaguar has the ability to stealth kill enemies without alerting others, while still being able to hold its own in open fights. The Big Scar Bear is who you call when shit gets real and you find yourself fighting in a phone booth, as he'll draw enemies to him and tank a ton of damage while you dish it out. That being said, once you get the Beast Rider perk, you'll likely be keeping Old Bloodfang with you, as it's the easiest and coolest way to get around. On top of the transportation possibilities, being the fastest animal in the game makes him ideal for running down any animal you're hunting. On top of that, the power he provides will often be enough to keep predators away, which late game, when you're just trying to get around, is a breath of fresh air and a feeling of progression, as for the most part you've earned the respect of the beasts around you. Overall, the gameplay is what you come for in a Far Cry game, and for the most part, Primal nails it. It may not be the peak of the series, but it's enough to get you logged in and wanting not to log off, which is really the only metric that matters. On top of that, you'll have access to a unique time period and weapon set, at least as far as mainline titles go. It's not a perfect 10 by any means, but there's nothing wrong with bringing an 8 to the dance. In Primal, you'll be out to conquer the land of Oros, and while it may just be a reskin of Kyrat from Far Cry 4, it feels entirely unique and, to me, far more special, especially when it gets to show its good side. We're going to mix in what little story there is here, but in all honesty, there's not much story, more like goals. The entirety of the story can be pretty easily broken down into you're Takar, who wants to secure your tribe, the Winja, in the land of Oros, and you're going to use your powers as the Beastmaster to do so. That's really it. You'll have two major adversaries in Ul, who leads the Udam, and Batari, who leads the Azila. They each have a large outpost with the lieutenant that you'll battle and befriend. Wow, befriend is a... You wrote befriend in this script? Jesus. That is not the correct word, but that's what I wrote. Holy. But, as far as true boss fights go, Ul and Batari will act as the only two in the game, with neither of them being truly difficult if you're appropriately leveled. Ul is the worst of the two, as he's incredibly slow and generally easy to avoid his powerful strikes as you move around him, taking poison antidote and dealing damage whenever you can. You'll kill him and steal his children. Wow. And what? Wow. Just takes the children, huh? Well, I guess he asked you to. And it's just really kind of an odd move, but I guess it's really not in Far Cry's wheelhouse to have you in the bloodline, so alright, whatever. Batari's fight is better, I suppose, but it really doesn't have anything to do with her. She's essentially a two-shot turret that you'll spam arrows at. Once you realize that you can stun her with bees and take a bunch of free shots at her, it somehow gets even more boring. The fun is the constant flood of reinforcements you get to style on as they enter the arena. You win, you kill her, nothing special. Now, surprisingly, because you'll recruit the second in command from each of these leaders and go about integrating them into the Wenja, they'll actually get more character development than the other two main leaders. Baturi's lieutenant is kind of just a whiny little bitch that will choose to stay with you after you beat the Azila, and you'll put him in charge of tending the fields. Da, on the other hand, is actually the only character in the game I found any attachment to. He's your common big, dumb, strong guy character, but honestly, he's had a tough go of it. He's plagued by skullfire, only described as a slow, painful death, and it clearly pains him. All he really had was being the second strongest of the Udam, which to him was the second strongest of anyone. Then you beat him and lock him in a cage. Right after that, your people go behind your back and attempt to drown him, which is seriously super fucked up, and you'll be forced to save him. Most of Da's life is just spent trying to get rid of the burning in his skull, and once you kill Ul and bring down the Udam, Da will ask you to quench that fire permanently in a scene that I didn't expect to hit me as hard as it did. I can respect a warrior who chooses to fall at the hands of those who defeated him on the field of battle rather than slowly in a bed, and I appreciate the respect Takar offers Da in this scene, sending him on his way without a fight, without a word, with his head held high.
Kapal pur guardu marti par Takar da guan. Schlau Dragwash.
That's enough of that though, so we can transition into the world we walk in, as I think it's not nearly talked about enough. Far Cry has often tried to make their open worlds violent and dynamic, but at the end of the day, outside of some bullshit in Far Cry 5, the dangers posed to you were often inconsequential for the most part. They were chaotic things present in a conquered world, but Primal has the ability to transport you back to a time when man may have been at the top of the food chain, but a lone man wasn't. Over the course of the game, you'll slowly but surely assert a level of dominance over the land around you, but for the most part, getting swarmed by a pack of wolves, hunted by stealthy felines, or God forbid, getting on the wrong side of a mammoth, could easily spell death for you. Later on, you'll climb upon your Bloodfang, and most animals will simply accept that you two together are not worth the challenge, fearing his roar and your spear. But before that, you'll learn to move through the forest with care, not wanting to challenge any of the mighty beasts around you. Even in the light of day, this is easily the best hunting has ever been in the Far Cry games. Lack of one-shot, long-range options means you'll have to move with stealth in mind to do the most possible damage on your first shot and move quickly following the blood trails before your target escapes. Hunting even things like tall deer can become an enthusiastic rush as its massive health pool turns into endurance tests, firing arrows whenever possible, but once these creatures accept that they cannot escape, they will choose to fight and can dish out massive damage, quickly turning the hunter into the hunted if you're not careful. Hunting predators turns this on its head entirely, as while many can be hard to find, they'll often attack once their presence has been noticed, but flee at high speeds once they don't think they can win in a fight against you. On top of that, tracking down rare variants of predators can become a much more daunting task than you were prepared for. Hunting the rare striped wolf took me all across the map, from wolf sighting to wolf sighting, over multiple in-game days, looking for not one but two of the beasts, as I needed to hunt one and tame another. Upon stalking the second for what felt like years, to finally come across it and get close enough to launch my spear, I felt a strange sense of pride when it found its mark. You cannot help but build a respect for the creatures you'll hunt across Oros, as they'll seemingly build up a respect for you. Hunting is by far my most positive takeaway from Primal, but outside of the great beast hunts, which actually were a bit of a letdown in my opinion, there was another way to level up the experience. You may go through great lengths to avoid the chaos in the daylight, but when night floods into Oros, it's an entirely new experience. This is not a modded version of the game, it's just running at max settings, and you can actually see the moment I stopped and soaked in the majesty of the game's nighttime beauty. The way the moonlight penetrates the fog accompanied by nature's soundtrack is just stunning. Very rarely do my favorite games get me to stop and look around, but night hunts mesmerized me every single time I took part in one, often choosing to hunt at night when possible just to enjoy the scenery. On top of what it does to the visuals, nighttime cranks up the intensity, as it's when the predators will also come out to hunt and will be at their most aggressive, with cats chasing down deer and wolf packs savagely running down their chosen victim. Often after the time sink in a game required to get all the footage I need to make a video, I don't want to set foot back in that world for a long while. It's why making videos can be so difficult, as you get overexposed to your favorite titles and risk having enough of them. But if you ask me to go one more night hunt in the land of Oros, I'd happily pick up my bow and set out again into the foggy night in search of new prey. Hey there, it's been a couple of videos since we had a music section, but I only cover it if I think it's worth your time. This is an interesting one for me because this game did get an original soundtrack, and while I think they absolutely nailed it, these just aren't the kind of tracks that are going to hit the Made the Playlist Club. What the music does do, however, was absolutely nail the land of Oros. It's the kind of beats that hit you in the chest and make you feel like you're on the hunt. There's plenty of songs, and I'll provide you a link to where I personally downloaded the soundtrack from if you have an interest in giving it or any other game soundtrack a listen. It's an awesome site that I feel the need to shout out, and it's never let me down. I'll also have a link below to the audio visualizer if you'd like to use it. Anyway, here you go. You guys would probably be surprised at how many games I revisit with the thought of making a video about them. What happens is often really simple. Either I put them down after a few hours, wanting nothing to do with them, or I can't help but tear through them because there's something I forgot I loved about it. Far Cry Primal was so effortless to jump into the way the majority of the series is. All the things I remember being cool about it are still there, and because I hadn't really cared about the story the first time, I got to experience some moments like they were new. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't think it's some hidden masterpiece that you'll be worse off for not playing, but it's a game that I had a fun time with, and isn't that enough? The same way I don't think every movie needs to be The Dark Knight, not every game needs to be Mass Effect. Sometimes you need a speed to just kick back and relax to, and that's what this was for me. It was just a way to have some fun. There's no real part of this game that falls down dramatically for me. The story is simple and told with a straight face, but it doesn't pretend it's some great work of art. I have to say that developing an entire language for a game they didn't even charge full price for was honestly pretty awesome, and I think that deserves praise. They didn't have to do it, but they did it, and that's what wins you points on this channel. The gameplay was engaging, simple, yet paired with the land of Oros, something engrossing that I found it hard to step away from. Overall, I'm glad I hopped back into Land of Oros. No, it wasn't the most amazing game I've ever played. To be honest, I don't think anyone needs to play it. But if you're like me and you were just looking for something to sit back and enjoy, don't have your headphones on, maybe if you're so inclined, pop a controller, lean it back, Far Cry's gonna be your thing, man. And Far Cry Primal's probably one you missed, so go have a fun new experience. I think you're really gonna enjoy it. Over the course of editing this video, I think I'll be dipping a toe into Far Cry Blood Dragon, and if it pulls me in the way Primal did, then you'll likely see a video on not only that, but New Dawn as well. I have Gotham Knights coming out after this, and after that it'll either be a Far Cry spin-off, as I mentioned, another Ubisoft title I don't feel gets enough love, or if I'm feeling very brave, Soma. But that's an entirely different beast. Thank you all for watching to the end, I really appreciate it. If you want to hear me talk about things, it'd be cool if you subscribe. But hey, if you don't, I still think you're neat anyway. Links to the socials down below if you want to stay up to date with the projects as they come. That'll be it. Until the next one, guys, this is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile.